Welcome to this video on Microsoft Excel. Now during this session, I'm going to show off one of the more powerful tools found inside of Microsoft Excel. We're going to take advantage of Excel's Power Query editor to take multiple data sets, perhaps these are on different worksheets or even completely different Excel files, different workbooks, and take it and merge it all together into one data set so that you can create your pivot tables, you can summarize the data, you can have your master lists. Now, it's not going to be just about merging the data together, but it's going to create a query that links back to the other sources. So let me give you an example here. And this is a question that I get asked all the time, but I got one the other day and I decided, you know what? I get this so often, I should really create a video about this tool so I can share with others and save you time as you perform these steps. Now the idea is, open in front of you, I've got an example file. It's called Regional Data 01. It's an Excel file. I'll provide a link so you can download the file. Look down in the description, down there at the bottom of the video. So you can go to the blog and you can download the file. Provided for you free of cost, right? It's there. You can use it. And I encourage you to do that, right? Get in there, download the file, follow along with me. You can pause the video, you can rewind, you can, all right, ready for this. So here I've got 4 worksheets, East records, West records, North, and South. Now, again, this is all in one workbook, but these could be different workbooks as well. And bring it all together. So they're all really the same data. They all have a region column, a category, 3 months worth of costs for those categories in those various regions, and then a total. There we go. And if I flip through each of these sheets, you can see it's still region, still category, and so on. It's the same stuff, just for different regions. So now I want to be able to take all this data and merge it into one master sheet. Call it done, and then I can create my pivot tables and summarize the data and have that master list. Now, if somebody goes back and updates the individual lists, I also want those edits, new records, deleted records, edited records, whatever, to then update my master list, and then in turn, update my pivot table. Call it done. Now, in the past, you may have done copy and paste. You may have created a new sheet, copied East, put it in a new sheet, went back to West, copied West records, pasted it into the new sheet, North, paste, copy, paste, South, copy, paste, right? What a hassle. I've done it before. I'm sure some of you have done it before. It's a hassle. It's not something that I want to do. So let's streamline this. Let's make it more efficient, right? Now I'm going to take you through a series of steps here. It's going to be a few steps, but once you get it set up, done, right? Somebody updates the previous records, your master gets updated as well. Here we go. So our first step, before I can get into the Power Query editor and start to merge all these records together, I need to format each of these lists as an Excel table. Well, if I click into my list and I'm looking at East right now, I click in there, I go to my Home tab. On my Home tab, I got a section called Styles. Then I'm going to go in there and I'm going to format as table, and I'm just going to pick a color. Colors, I mean, it's personal. It's icing on the cake, right? Whatever you like inside there. It's not going to make an impact on any other features. So I'm just going to grab this blue one. All right, A1 to F23. That sounds about right. My table does have headers. So I'll hit OK. And there's my nice little table. Now I did get a new table design, table tools design tab there. And on the far left, they give me a name. This is important because later on when we do the appending of the records to create the master list, we need to know the name of the tables that we want to include in the query. So I'll click into the table name, and I'm just going to call this East Records just to match the worksheet name there and the data I'm looking at. I'll hit my Enter key. Now, very important, if you haven't done name ranges or table names inside of Excel before, make sure you do not use a space. Excel doesn't like it. No spaces in your names. So we just got East Records all put together there. All right, capital E, capital R, just to make it easier to read. Now let's go over to West, and I'm just going to repeat the same steps. Click into my list, Home, format as table. I'll grab the blue one again. All right, change the name, West Records. There we go. And just repeat it 2 more times. North, Home, format as table. And we got North Records. So there we go, North Records. And one more time, South. Home. Format as table. Blue. We can change the color. Maybe I should have changed the color just to mix it up a little bit. Here we go, South Records. And there we go. So now I got all three of the worksheets nice and formatted as tables. Now there's all sorts of other features you can take advantage of here with the table format. Things like filtering, sorting, total rows, different formatting, whatever. There's so much you can do in there. If you haven't played around with those, I highly recommend it. So, but what's important to us is their format as a table and the names. Remember the names. Click in the table, Table Tools Design tab, far left, change the name, and now remember those names. All right, so once that's done, our next step, we're now going to create the query that will start combining all of these lists into one master list. All right, here we go. So I'm going to go up to the Data tab. On the Data tab, I got a section called Get and Transform Data. Now, if you're on one of the relatively newer editions, like 2013, 16, or even 19, your screen should look very, very similar to mine. But because of the resolution of the size of my screen, I've just got icons up here. If your screen is much larger, you may actually see the names of the tools. And for example, I'm looking for this one. It looks like a little table, a little rectangle with some down arrows at the top. This one's called From Table Range. So I want to get data from a table. Well, we've created the tables, right? So I hit that little button. I'm currently on the East records inside my table. Hit that little button. We'll give this just a moment. This is going to open up a completely separate window. This is it's still part of Excel, but it's called the Power Query Editor. So we're creating a query here that's pulling the data from that list. If you look closely, we've got the exact same list here. We got the region, the category, and the 3 months, and the total. East, categories, and so on. Now, this is just one list. Ultimately, I want to get all 4 lists. So we're going to modify this query. We're going to make some changes here so that it can grab all the data from the other lists. All right. Now, first off, over on the right-hand side, we got this Query Settings tab. This is going to give you a quick little rundown of everything this query has done to this data. So the first thing we got here, if I click on it, is the source. This is, where's this data coming from? So they created what's called a variable. It's essentially a name that we can then put stuff into. In this case, it's an action, it's a step, and they called it source. So the source of this data, if I look at the top of the screen here, this is kind of like the formula bar back inside of the Excel interface. I've got an Excel document, the current workbook, and I'm looking for something named East Records, and I want its content. That's the source. That was step 1. That's what it did inside this query first. The next thing it did is it changed some types. So if I click on Change Type, you can see up above that they did some stuff. They transformed column types. They took region and made sure that that was text. They took category, made sure that that was text. And then June, July, and so on over here. Here we go. It's made them all integers, numeric values, right? Ding, 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 and ding. There we go. So that's a nice step, and it did a lot of that work for me. I don't necessarily need it. So just to make this as simple as possible, as we go through the next steps, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, Excel, thank you very much, but no, I don't want it. So I'm going to X that one out. We'll get rid of it. Now my data is still the same. Nothing's really changed inside there. Ultimately, I do want to make sure that these are numbers because they are numbers, and maybe I want to do calculations with them, but not necessary in this case. I'll remove it just to clean it up a little bit and make it as simple as possible as we go through the next steps. All right. So now remember, we only got East right now. I need West and North and South. There's a total of four data sets that I need to combine into this one data set so I can create my pivot tables. So my next step is I want to run the append or the append operation inside of the Power Query Editor. So I can go to my Home tab. Towards the right, I got a section called Combine, and there's an operation in there for append queries. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of information here. And what I'm going to show off here it's ultimately what we're going to be editing to get this all together. But I just want to put a little disclaimer, right? If I put some text on the screen, right there, right? Disclaimer, I would say that there's a language in the background of the Power Query editor. There's a language that Excel uses to generate and maintain these queries. Now for us, right, we get this nice little interface with buttons to press, and it creates these actions or these steps that it does for us. But in the background, again, there's this language back there that they used to generate and maintain these queries. Now, if you're familiar with databases, you've probably heard and maybe even worked with SQL, SQL. It's the language of databases. Okay? Now, inside of SQL, you do things like pull data from tables, right? I want data from this table. I want these fields and any criteria you want, any type of relationships between other tables, and you write this little statement, a SQL statement, to be able to communicate with the database and get the data you're looking for. Well, this is very similar, right? But this is going to be your Power Query language. And we're going to take a look at it here, and we're going to make some edits to it. Now, back to the Home tab. Underneath the Query section, there's something called Advanced Editor. Advanced. So I give that button a press, and this opens up the statement or the language that the Power Query uses in order to get our data for us and perform those steps. So you see here we have two portions of it. We have a let statement and an end statement. And in the let statement, we have a single line that's saying, hey, we have a source, and that source is equal to East Records, its content. And then inside the end statement, they're just outputting source. They're outputting the data. So all it really said was, hey, it created a source, it connected to this data, now let's go ahead and display it. There it is right there. So we are going to make a change to this. But before we do that, we're going to make it even simpler for us. Let's close that. I'm going to cancel. I'm going to perform another step here. Remember the steps window here? I'm going to perform another step that runs the append step. We're essentially going to take the East Records and we're going to append it to itself so it writes a little bit more of the code for us, right? Kind of a cheap way to get additional content inside of that editor, inside the language, so that we can manipulate it. Take a look. I'm going to go to my Home tab again. I'm going to go over to Combine, Append Queries. Let's give it a moment. Here comes a little window. All right, inside the Append window, we have two tables. We actually have multiple tables, but I'm going to stick with two right now. And I'm going to append the table East Records. Now, we already got East Records out here. That was the source, right? I'm going to take East Records and then append it to itself. Now, this might seem a bit odd because we want like West and North and South. Well, we don't have those options because we haven't turned them into queries yet. We haven't run the Power Query editor on those tables yet. Okay. So I'm just going to use East because that's the only one we have right now. And then we're going to modify it to get the other ones. So let's say East Records. I'm going to hit OK. Now notice over here inside of the steps window, we have our source. That was the original. There's my East Records. And then we have this Append Query step, which essentially just doubled up the East. I've now got 44 records in there. Source was just 22. 22 plus 22 is 44. And it's just appended that list to itself. All right, great. Really? Great. Don't we want North and South and West? Well, yeah. But take a look at this. If we now go back to Home, back into the Advanced Editor, here's a few more statements. We've now got the source, which is the East Records, and we've got this new line in there that's running the Append Query. And it's saying that the Append Query is equal to the table combining source and source. It's just taking, remember East Records, which is source? It's just taking source and appending it to itself. Now watch this. What if I do this? What if I do comma, source, there it is. So now remember source is equal to East Records. Now I'm appending it 3 times. Let's hit done here. And now how many records do I got? 66. 22 plus 22 is 44 plus 22 is Hopefully my math's right. 66. So advanced editor, we're just using this table.combine operation to combine all the sources together. All right, now here comes the beauty. Now that we have the basics of this little statement, we're going to modify it just a little bit to get the other sources and append it into one data source. All right, let's try this. So this guy right here, it's called source. Again, there's a lot more information that we can really get into here, but again, keeping it really simple. Source, it's a variable, essentially a name, access storage that we could put something inside of. So here they call it source, but let's change it up. Let's call it source 1. Source 1 is going to reference East records. Okay. Now we have 4 other sources, right? So I'm going to take that line, that complete first line there. I'm going to copy it, Control C. I'm going to go off to the right, just break a line, and I'm going to paste it in 3 more times because we got a total of 4 sources, right? So now let's update them. See how it's got a squiggly line underneath it? It says, oh, you already got a variable called source 1. Okay, well, that's fine. Let's change that to source 2, source 3, oops, 3, source 4. We could call them north, east, south, west, whatever. But over here, we need to tell it specifically what data those sources should be holding on to. So we had east. Let's do west. Oops, make sure I spell that right. Let's drop down. I'm going to change this one to north and change this one to south. Oops, south. All right, so now we got 4 sources, source 1, 2, 3, and 4, that are looking at different tables that we created. So now we can go to this append query, get into the combine operation, and we're going to make this equal to source 1. We'll make this one source 2. And this one will be source 3. Then I'll go comma. And then we want, let's get that out of the way. We want source 4. All right, that looks good. Then that's 4 sources, all looking at the 4 different tables, and then combining them all together. And then it outputs the append query, which is a combination of all 4 sources. So let's take a look at this. Let's hit done. And now back to my table. There's my 4 sources, and it runs the append. There's my east, there's my west, my north, and my south. There's all the records right there. So we've taken all 4 sources and appended them together to create that one master list. And how simple is that, right? Format your tables, get that done, give them names. That way you can reference them later on inside this window. And then we can use the advanced editor to make some tweaks and combine them all together into one source. All right, so we're not done yet. This is still inside the Power Query editor. Now I want to be able to bring this back to Excel so we can create our pivot table. So I go back to my Home tab. I'm going to go to Close and Load. I'm hitting the lower half of that button. And I'm going to do a Close and Load to. Give it a moment. It's going to open up another window for us. There we go. All right, import data. We are going to create a table that's going to combine all that stuff together, and we're going to put it into a new worksheet. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. And there it is. There's all my east records, my west records, my north, and my south, all in one data set. Now, this was all in one workbook, just different worksheets, and we've merged them or combined them all together. Now, if somebody's still working on their sheet, let's say I go to East. Let's make this table a little bit bigger. I'll and put another East record here. I'm gonna have candy as a category. Let's just do hundreds across there. That'd be 300, right? That really should be a calculation, but there we go. There's my new record. So I hop back over to sheet 1 where my master list is at, and let's look here. Let's see, we got East. Do you see any candy in there? Candy. No candy. Now this guy right here, it's actually a query. Okay? It's connected to the other data source, but the update isn't immediate. You need to refresh the table. So I click into my table. I go to my Table Tools Design tab here. And on that tab, about halfway down, I got a refresh button. I'll refresh. And where's it at? There it is. Candy. East, Candy, hundreds, 300 total. Done. People could be working on their data. Remember, this could come from other workbooks. Grab it from the other workbook, dump it in here. People could be working on those workbooks. You got your master list. You update it, you refresh it, and you've now got their data. It's beautiful, beautiful. Save you so much time. So now I can click into that master sheet, combination of all the data there, go to insert a pivot table. I'm going to create a new table. We can give that a new name. Let's call that all regions. It's going to be in, oh, you know what? I blew that one. That's looking for the table that we want. We want this guy right here. We can rename it someplace else. This is just going to be all this data right here, which is the, what was it called? East records. All right, that looks good. We're going to put it into a new sheet. I'll hit OK. All right, there's my field headers there. Let's just close some of these windows just to get them out of the way. And I'm going to move this just so it's out of the way of my big fat head there. Let's make that a little bit bigger. All right, so now I'm going to grab category. I'll drop it in the rows. I'll grab total. I'll drop that into the value section. And now I've got a summary of all that data from those 4 different worksheets where we combined it all together into one data source. Okay. There we have it. And now I can summarize the data. People make updates. You want to make sure you refresh. And you're going to want to make sure you refresh your pivot table as well. What do you think? Save you loads of time. Relatively easy to do. But if there's something you got hung up on, make sure you rewind, you pause. Look at that in and let statement within your Power Query editor. And all we really did in there was just copy the lines, make some adjustments to the names so that we can combine all this data into one data set. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you got something out of it, and hopefully it'll save you loads of time as you work with multiple data sets that you then want to summarize. So I appreciate you taking a look at the video. Share it. Make sure you download the file. Remember, there's a link down below. You can practice what we just went through. So thanks a lot, and then I'll talk with you again.